Welcome. My name is Jessica Talbert, and I'm a second-year MBA at Stanford Graduate School of Business. And I'm here today with Kirsten Moss, Assistant Dean and Director of Admissions and Financial Aid.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for the introduction. As admissions officers, we spend much of our time traveling around the world and meeting with candidates to share information about Stanford and whether or not it could be a good fit for what they're looking for in their graduate education experience. But today we want to do something different. Instead of talking about Stanford, we want to talk about you and how you, if you're interested in applying, can put your best foot forward in the process.
What are some of the most common myths about the Stanford application process?
I think the myth that I hear most frequently is that members of the admissions committee at Stanford have some magic checklist that each applicant must fulfill in order to be admitted to our program. I've heard things like, I have to have a GMAT score over 700, or I need to work in a particular industry to be admitted, or even come from a particular type of educational institution. And really nothing could be farther from the truth. If you think about the last few classes that we've admitted, we have students from over 60 different countries. We have students from 160 different educational institutions. And we have students coming from, I think, on average, over 300 different work environments before they come, different companies. And there's only 400 students in a class. So you can see in reality, we're admitting humans for what they've done and who they are. We're not admitting people just because they went to a certain institution or worked in a certain industry. In fact, I think it was a few weekends ago, we were at Admitted Students Weekend, which I know you've been to, Admit Weekend, and there were two students I was talking to, and both of them said they almost didn't apply to Stanford. Like it came this close to not applying. I'm like, why? One said he was in a chat room, and somebody told him that, Stanford will never admit you because of the institution, because of the university that you went to. And he went to a state school in the Midwest. And then another student said the same thing had happened to her. And one of her peers from work had told her, they were talking about where they wanted to apply, that with her GPA and test scores, she'd never get into Stanford. So luckily for us, both of these students decided that for themselves whether or not they should apply and are now going to be entering this fall. So we're really excited about that.
How do you decide then whether or not you have a shot at getting into Stanford?
That's a great question. That's probably the million-dollar question, and I'm hoping all of what we discussed today will give applicants insight into whether or not they have a shot. But I think if I had to go to the essence, like what is absolutely most important in making that decision, we're trying to answer two questions on the admissions committee. The first is this particular applicant going to be engaged academically when they come to our program? And the second is, what kind of impact will they have after they graduate? And if you think, we care about their educational engagement because we're a higher education institution. We want our classroom to be vibrant. You probably know as a student, the more interested folks are when they're in there learning and curious, the better and richer that experience will be. And then on the flip side, we do care and believe in our tagline. We want to know when we're selecting these students that they have the potential to change lives, change organizations, and change the world. Jessica, I'm curious about how you decided whether to apply to Stanford.
For me, it was about thinking, am I ready to take a next leap in my career, not just next step? I had spent about 5 years in retail and tech and kind of formulated an idea of the kind of impact I wanted to have on those industries, but I wasn't exactly sure what the best step forward was in order to be successful. And I think knowing that I was ready to make that impact is what helped me decide to apply.
That's great. How did you approach the application process?
Oh, the application process. I think I thought about it in two ways mainly. The first one was really about introspection, really understanding who I was, what I wanted to get out of the world, and what kind of impact I wanted. And it's easier said than done. For me, it took the form of journaling every morning and then kind of looking back after a couple of months and seeing what common themes there were, what was important to me on a day-to-day basis. And I think once I crystallized around that, I had a really good idea of what I really wanted to get out of it and who I was. The second part was about information gathering. Making sure that what I wanted to get out of it was actually what business school was going to be like and not just what I thought it was going to be like. And that was combing through Stanford's resources, going to town halls that your office would go to around the U.S., and really talking to alumni and current students. Can we talk about how you evaluate whether someone will engage academically at Stanford?
We're looking for students who are curious, who are willing to share their perspectives both inside and outside of the classroom, And perhaps most importantly, we're looking for students who want to seek new ideas, new perspectives, almost insights or truth, and to do that in a collaborative way. When you leave GSB as a leader, you're going to go out and have some tough problems to solve, but you're not going to do it by yourself. You're not going to do it in your own head somewhere. So really having someone who's going to be leveraging the thoughts of others to come up with the best possible solution is important. To assess these behaviors, we look in multiple places in the application. The most obvious would be the transcript. And for me, I usually read, I'll take a day, Tuesdays and Thursdays during application season. I get to read from home. It's my favorite thing to do. And every time it is, I read along with the applicants and your stories. But when I open a file, one of the first things I do is I go to the transcript, because that tells so much about someone. What are the kind of courses you took? What were you most interested in studying? Are you someone who went broad and liked to see how different disciplines connect with each other, or maybe someone who went very deep? So that's step one, and I do get information about how curious someone is and how the rigor and course choices impacted them. But perhaps more importantly than the transcript is looking for evidence of this curiosity in other things that people have done. So perhaps you were at work and there was tough problems to solve and you worked with others to figure it out. Or perhaps you did research at your university beyond your classes. One of my most recent favorite stories was from someone we admitted in this class. And
It wasn't mine?
No, it wasn't yours. Sorry, Jessica. The one coming in. Could have been, though. And it was an individual. I think he was in business development in a tech company. It was a growing tech company. And he joined when the company was only about 50 people. And he said one of the things he loved best when he joined was that wherever he was, there was laughter in the hallways. And he thought that was a sign of people being optimistic, innovative. And then as time went on and they were doubling and tripling in size, the laughter went away. Yeah, and he remembered going to an all-hands meeting and asked the senior management, this is a concern, what can I do? And came up with the idea to do a pulse survey. The only problem, to check in with the culture, the only problem was he said he had no idea how to do an HR survey, what cultural engagement was, how to build it, how to write questions, all of that. But you watch him go through a path of just curiosity, of meeting with experts both in the company and outside of the company, researching material to figure out, what are some good benchmark surveys? How do we develop questions that'll work? Luckily, they had some PhD students in this company who were doing business analytics that I could get help from. But the point is, that's a great story about using your curiosity and your drive to find truth about this company to come up with, they essentially came up with a great answer about what they could be doing differently as they move forward. So hopefully that helps give you a sense of what I'm looking for and how I'm looking for it.
Many students, myself included, are worried about their test scores. What advice do you have there?
This is probably the most frequently asked question that I get is, what about my GMAT score? What about my GRE? And the reality is we look for a wide range, or we accept students with a wide range of test scores, and it is just one data point, and I truly mean that. So my best advice is, we look at the tests, and they are important to ensure that you're going to be able to thrive quantitatively and verbally in the program. So my best advice is we look at it. You should spend some time preparing. What I hope for every applicant is when they submit that score, and I know it's stressful, that you feel it's at least a decent reflection of what your capabilities are. So that's where the preparation comes in. That being said, though, I know for many students test taking is not their forte. So again, if there's a score, honestly, in an application where it's far from maybe what our median might be, and we do admit people in the 500s, the 600s, and the 700s, but if I see this may not be the strongest point of their application, that's when I'm diving into the transcript and seeing again, how do they learn? Maybe tests just aren't their thing.
So I'd like to ask you about GPA. Stanford says that there's no minimum GPA, but can you get in with a low GPA? I'd also like to know how you evaluate GPAs outside of the U.S.
Both of those questions come up from applicants often as well. Again, the GPA is just one indicator, but this one is about a 4-year period of time, often a 3 or 4 period of time. So we do look at that. For us, if you think about the GPA, we know that it's going to vary by institution, the level of a GPA, also even by major. Sometimes I find that highly rigorous quantitative majors or sometimes more science-oriented, on average, students' GPAs will be lower there. So that's something we're taking into consideration. In addition, if you think about international schools, we don't convert their GPAs into U.S. Conversions. We actually look at the country and try to be familiar with what's their educational system and recognize that oftentimes international GPAs are less inflated than U.S. GPAs may be. So all of that is for you to realize that we're trying to do our best to understand what it looks like in your particular context. That being said, if you look at your transcript and look at it with fresh eyes on an applicant, and you see a point in time, a semester, quarter, whatever it was, where you don't think it reflects your true capabilities, tell us about that. We have an additional information section. Could have been health, it could have been a personal situation, but we're looking for reasons to admit you, not for reasons to deny. So any context that you can give us to help understand, what your trajectory has been would be really helpful.
That's great. I like the framing of that too. We're looking for reasons to admit us, not to deny us.
Exactly.
That's great.
And no applicant is going to be outstanding in every dimension.
Yeah.
So you put your best foot forward and know that those strengths are the important things.
Let's discuss letters of reference. What advice do you have for choosing recommenders?
I don't know if applicants really appreciate how important the letters of reference are.
Yeah.
It's really the one opportunity that we get to see you through someone else's eyes, objectively. What did you do and how did you do it? So for me, put a lot of emphasis on making the selection. I can give you some tips on how to think about it. At Stanford, we request 2, and one we ask for a current direct supervisor or an alternative, the best alternative if that is impossible or inappropriate. And then for the second recommendation, we also ask for someone who supervised your work, but it could be from a nonprofit, it could be extracurricular, or from the same organization. Now, when you think about selecting them, we really, just as I've asked applicants in their essays to tell us about the impact that they've had, because this past behavior will predict future behavior, that's the echo that we want to see in the reference. So find someone who knows what you've done, really been in the trenches and can see your work and to describe not just what happened, but how you did it and how the way you did it might have been different from others. So that means don't worry about the title of a person. Don't try to get the highest title. Also, I hear a lot of students asking or applicants asking, should I try to find someone who went to Stanford because that's important? No, it's not. It's actually what the recommender can tell us about you that is most important. The second thing is, after them understanding what you've done, is enthusiasm. And this is this is a hard, for someone who reads lots of thousands of recommendations. This one's a hard one to wrap your hands around, but I know the best recommendations that I read are written from both a head space and a heart space.
Right.
So try to think about who you've established a relationship with, someone who really, enthusiasm's a great word, but has a connection with you and will be able to speak to that. And that's how recommendations become most memorable. And then lastly, I think applicants should think about the process. Don't ask for a recommendation in an email. It's going to take this person a significant amount of time. On average, our references are about 2 pages. I'm guessing people have to spend at least an hour or 2 to do a good job on them. What is most disappointing to me when I'm really looking to find reasons to admit is I'll get to the end of an application, I'll be on the second recommendation, and I'll see someone, everything's been so positive, and they'll write a positive recommendation, but maybe only 2 paragraphs, and just say, they're phenomenal, they're the best ever, they've done a great job, but I won't have any of that data to help me make a decision. And it just means that this particular applicant doesn't have as much, data, I guess is the best word, but landscape for me to really understand what they've done and how they've done it. So take it seriously, make an appointment, even if it's a 15-minute chat, but ask the question courageously and say, will you write it? It's important. Explain why, where you're going, what schools, but then say, do you have time to invest to do a good job on this? And if someone says they're really busy, that's a good indication that maybe you should go to your second choice, because it can make a difference in the end of how much they're willing to spend time to help you in this process.
And then for the recommenders, are there any resources for them, or how do they know how to write their applicant the best letter they can?
That's a great question. We try to give, and many recommenders have written more than one before, but we try to give them clear advice and tips. When they're invited onto our portal on the website, the questions will ask, how has this person differentiated themselves from others that they've seen doing similar roles, and what have they done and accomplished? So they'll get that. And I think it comes down to that they're willing to take the time to really support you. There's no magic there, but they do have to make that investment and be close enough to you to be able to write thoughtfully about what you've done.
Many reapplicants worry that they are at a disadvantage to first-time applicants. Is that true? And do you have any advice for people who are trying to reapply?
And we really read them fresh. So my best advice is the person who is evaluating your application likely has never seen it before. So there's no reason to explain what's different or what changed or maybe why you think you didn't get in. Some people will try to tell us that. Just start fresh and look at what you've already submitted. You don't have to change everything, but think, is there something at this moment in time that could be more compelling, perhaps than the last, or some way I want to change it to be more representative of where I am at this moment. But please do, if you're committed to Stanford, reapply, because there's a lot of students that we admit from that category.
Some of my favorite classmates are reapplicants.
They told you.
I'm really glad
That's great.
that they're here.
That's awesome.
If an applicant does get an interview, how would you recommend they prepare for that interview?
Well, first of all, if an applicant gets an interview, congratulations. That's a really good sign.
Awesome.
We usually interview about 2 candidates for every spot that we have. So number one, the word prepare is a really good one. If you've made it this far and worked this hard, you know, treat this as an important part of the process. We do unlike some other schools, we use our alumni for interviewers, and they are all around the globe. We try to match you with people from your country, maybe perhaps an industry that you're in, if possible, currently in, so they really understand you. And it's in 2 parts. The first half an hour is primarily evaluative, and then the last 15 minutes, it's a chance for you to meet someone from the community. So come prepared with the mindset to do both. In the first part, it's a behavioral-based interview. So the stories that we were talking about before, come ready to tell them. We're going to want to know about what you're most proud of.
Yeah.
What was the context? What was the challenge? What did you do? How did you do it? And then what was the impact? So expect some probing around those stories. And then on the second part, it's fun. Our community is so tight.
Yeah, I enjoyed my interview a lot, actually. I had a great time.
Yeah. And did you enjoy the interviewer?
I did. It was pretty expert, actually. It was really good at really drawing stories out of me, rather kind of in like intense questions. And by the end of it, I felt that there was somebody that I'd really gotten to know, and somebody who was a part of a community I was excited to be a part of. So the interview was actually really great for me and getting excited for school.
And that's a wonderful way to help with the second tip. That last part of the interview it's a gift. It's a chance to develop a relationship. Come prepared with some questions that you want to know about Stanford, obviously, but see it as just one entry step to being part of a bigger community.
So there is a lot of information out there for people applying to business school. I know I went through a lot of it. Some of it helpful, some of it not.
Yeah.
What are the best resources for applying to Stanford?
And I think you make a good point. There's a lot of misinformation out there as well. We really believe the best information, start with what we put out there on the website. What's nice about it now is there's lots of conversations with students out there, so you can learn about what it's actually like from the students. Much more, I think that's more interesting than hearing it from admissions. Yeah. As well as there's, profile information, tips about the application, start there. But one of the most important things you can do is also go to an information session. And we do about 100 of them around the globe. And the reason for that is you'll get a panel of 4, usually 3 to 5 recent graduates, and they can tell you, we believe that Stanford can be transformational for you both in what you learn, but also how you develop. So you can actually listen to how this experience has impacted people in their own lives, both from how they went through as well as what they're doing now when they graduate. So I think that's one of the best ways you can truly be inspired, but also get your questions answered. And if we're not coming to your hometown, then go to the web. We have a virtual one too, where you can hear students talking and recent alumni about their experiences.
Any other advice?
Before I give you my last words of wisdom or my last piece of advice, we've been spending the last half an hour talking about how the admissions committee evaluates candidates, but I would really like to put you on the spot and say you started 2 years ago, you're about to graduate.
Yes.
In just a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what surprised you most about joining this community of students at the GSB?
Oh, this has just been such an amazing 2 years. Difficult, but amazing. And I think a couple of things surprised me. The first one is that I knew that I was going to come here and find really intelligent classmates, really accomplished classmates, people who were going to make me feel like I didn't do a lot. But I don't think I could have fathomed just the breadth of experience and passions that these people would have, and how important that was going to be to me and my experience here. I could have a good idea of what the academics were going to look like, but not really the people I was going to meet. And I've met some of the most amazing people in the world here. And And for that, I'll be really grateful. The second thing that I think was really surprising to me is that I expected to become a better business person here, but I didn't expect to become a better person. And I really do think that I have, and I think a lot of that I owe to like the breadth of experience from my classmates and the time I've spent with them.
What do you mean a better person?
A better person.
That's well said.
Yeah, I think it's about having the tools to be a little bit more introspective, to examine the way that I go through the world, my own biases, and challenge them. And then really having the toolkit to do that consistently and throughout my life, so that I know when I leave this place, I'll be able to look back on those experiences and draw on them, and maybe do a better job than I would have before business school.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So here's my closing advice. I guess this is for all you applicants out there. I think what's most important to me is to tell you, do not underestimate your own potential. There's no perfect applicant. There's no checklist that we're looking at of attributes that we require. Decide for yourself whether you're worth the investment to go through the application process. And what I know from talking to many, many applicants in the past, that you spending the time to know what's most important to you, what you value, what your aspirations are, and then what you've really done and the accomplishments you've had, those are going to be critical to you at this point in time, no matter what you do. So we're genuinely excited to learn about you, to learn about how you've actually had impact on your teams, your organizations, and your communities, and what you care about. So if you have a story to tell us, you know that we're here and genuinely ready to and excited to read it. So thanks so much, Jessica, for taking the time.
And thank you so much for this, Kirsten. Really, this is really helpful.